Which bottom-tier Atlantic Division team could give the Florida Panthers fits? And Rookie Showcase begins this weekend. All this and more on today's Locked On Florida Panthers podcast.
You're Locked On Panthers, your daily podcast on the Florida Panthers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome into this Friday, September 12th edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it is your team every day. Thank you for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day. I'm Armando Velez from the Hockey News. You can follow me on X at MondoMan12. That is Nich Fairbanks joining me on another edition of Fairbanks Friday. You could follow him on X at Prudencia0. Shout out to every day who's come back here and get your daily Florida Panthers fix. So, Panther fans, today on the show, we are going to discuss which bottom-tier Atlantic Division teams from last year's standings could give the Florida Panthers fits this season, as during the regular season, we are bound to see some duds and some nights that the Panthers will be off, and also preview the prospect showcase going on this weekend in Wesley Chapel. But yes, as we mentioned, Nich Fairbanks is back. Fairbanks Friday is back, and he is coming to us from Minnesota. So, Nich, welcome back to the show, my friend, and grateful that you are here.
No, appreciate it. And Fairbanks Friday was never going away. It just needed to take a little hiatus while we made the transition up here and in the state of hockey. So can't wait to check out some high school hockey, because it is like the thing here, kind of like football in Texas, or high school football in Texas. But I think we have some big things to talk about, some interesting things that could impact the Panthers going forward. And then on top of that, I think, I think that some of the teams that we're going to talk about will probably want to play up the standard, because they're playing the two-time Stanley Cup champ Florida Panthers.
Yeah, and let's get right to it. So the teams that we're going to discuss today are Montreal, Detroit, Buffalo, and Boston. We're going to leave Ottawa, Tampa Bay, and Toronto out of this, as we are going to do a separate recording at a later date with actually a four-way conversation with the host of those Locked On shows. So yeah, let's get right into it, starting with the Montreal Canadiens, where the Panthers had a hard time with them last season, 0-3-1 in the season series. Where, I mean, right from the first game, which was their annual trip to South Florida, a low energy game for the Panthers, a matinee coming off the Christmas break. Although they had 34 shots on goal for the game, it was a little deceiving. Very perimeter based. Jakub Dobiš was making his debut against the Panthers, and the Panthers were shut out in that one. And it was expected with the home team and a matinee during Christmas. There was a lot of distractions. The second one, March 15th, another low event game, 12 shots to 15. Fell behind by 2 in the first, and nothing was going to go past Sam Montembeault. He even stopped one on a 6-on-4 late in the game. And then the third one for the Panthers, which was a first part of a home and home. Panthers never had the lead, responded each time the Habs scored on the power play, and even iced it later on with an empty net after scoring early in the third. Panthers lost 4-2, and that was the famous game where Nico Mikkola had that cross ice shot that hit David Savard. He got fined for it, and then a few days later, on that Tuesday, Vanacek was starting. It was the first end of back-to-back. The Panthers had the lead. They had that game won until Nick Suzuki scored in overtime, and also at the end of regulation, where the Panthers division chances went away. But that was, they didn't have a power play goal or a lead until that fourth game of the season series. So Montreal really gave the Panthers a truly hard time. So as far as coming into this season for the Habs, they're going to get a full season of Ivan Demidov. They traded they're deep at defense, so they traded one of their deep prospects, Logan Mailloux, for Zach Bolduc to bolster up the second line, and also made the big trade for Noah Dobson in the offseason. Traded their 2 first-round picks, the 14th and 15th pick, to New York, and also has a 1-2 punch with Dobson and Lane Hudson. So, but the problem is, Nick, with this team is, once again, what's going to be happening down the middle right now. Kirby Doc is scheduled as their second line center. He does have deal with a lot of injury issues. So the Panthers do have the advantage down the middle, but this is a team that is still building pretty strong outside of the middle.
Definitely. And, you could just see that there was an extra tenacity to Montreal's game whenever they played the Panthers. I mean, they were just pests. They were taking the Panthers out of their game. It's almost as if they were playing the Panthers game and throwing it in their face at times. So that doesn't happen often. There's a lot of, commentators or a lot of talk around the league where people are like, oh, well, it's Florida, nobody's going to be able to beat them. And yet Montreal kind of found out like, hey, maybe we just play their type of game. I mean, which in hockey, you don't really want to change how you play. You want to dictate what you're going to play, like what your game plan is. But it does seem like Montreal did figure something out. And I think it helped that they had an infusion of younger guys that are stepping up, had career years. And now you're bringing in reinforcements on defense and also on the second line that could definitely bolster their standings. But with that being said, I think Montreal may have been one of the teams that overachieved last year. I'm not settled on their goaltending. I hate to say that because Sam Montembeault is a great guy, great goaltender, but at the same time, like I just don't see them taking the next step. I see them taking a step back. Now, is that still going to be a problem for Florida? It might be, but if you're going into the Christmas break, the game before Christmas and it's a matinee, how many people are going to be interested in playing that game? So that's all I'll say about it.
Yeah, and also some of their older pieces are now starting to move down into the lineup. Brendan Gallagher, Josh Anderson are on the fourth line. Mike Matheson is scheduled to be on the third pair as far as daily faceoff, while some of the young guys are now starting to take over for that. So the season series this year will be at home on December 30th, right before the Winter Classic, and then 2 trips to Montreal. So it's one of those 3-game series this year on January 8th, and then in the final month of the season on April 7th. So the next team we have, which I know that you are very close to due to your significant other cheering for the Red Wings. So this was one of the 3-game series for the Panthers last year, but they'll be playing 4 this year. So it's strange because all the matchups for Florida against Detroit were after a head coach firing. Todd McClellan comes in, power play merchants throughout the year, even after that. So only one of their 5 goals came on 5-on-5 on the first matchup where the Florida Panthers lost. The second one was mostly their AHL roster in that back-to-back after getting goalied the day before against Anton Forsberg and the Ottawa Senators. But hey, there's only so much that Vitek Vanacek could have done in that game from the inexperience on the roster. And then the third one, the Panthers were in the middle of a winning streak right before the regular season ended, before the New York Rangers and Tampa Bay Lightning gave them a few L's there. But the Panthers pressed it on with 3 goals in 13 minutes in the second period, and then Brad Marchand added some insurance along with Alexander Barkov there. Some of the additions were Jane Van Riemsdyk, who's going to be partnered, going to be in the same team as the guy who was drafted before him, and Patrick Kane, Mason Appleton, Bernard Docker on the defense, and then veteran John Gibson between the pipes to be the backup for the Detroit Red Wings. And this is one where I'm not sure if John Gibson moves the needle for the Detroit Red Wings. For Detroit, you signed Ben Sherratt a few years ago, and he's still playing on the top pair. This was supposed to be a bridge, a stopgap for the next defenseman for the Detroit Red Wings to actually take that mantle, but it hasn't manifested, and the Yzer plan is a little bit at a crossroads right now there. So that it's just very head scratching. They get rid of the Tarasenko contract to possibly make space in a possible pursuit for Aaron Ekblad, and then what happens? Aaron Ekblad resigns in Florida.
So here's the thing about Detroit. They are definitely in a position where results matter. Steve Yzerman has said it. I mean, he'll say a very few words, but you can tell. He is telling all the guys that he's drafted that it's time to step up. Some of their bigger draft picks are actually coming over now and starting to play. I do like their defense outside of Sherratt. They got rid of Petrie, who is now a Florida Panther. I think this year is the year that they do make that leap and probably make the playoffs. They'll probably be that last team in the Atlantic that makes it. I'm going to disagree with you on Gibson, and the reason being is that for this team, he's probably the most complete goaltender they've had in a very long time. And that's even saying about Jimmy Howard. Jimmy Howard was very solid for much of his career, but towards the end, he just could not stay healthy. Whereas Gibson, I think, will be the top guy that can actually win them some games, whether, they're, waiting to come back in the third period or they need to lock it down. I think he will be able to be that guy. And then as far as all the young guys that they're bringing in, they're all really big redwood trees. Like, why are there 2 or 3 guys that are 6'6" or bigger that are skaters, like forwards and defensemen? It's ridiculous. So I think this team, outside of Montreal, is probably going to give Florida the worst time. And as you said, it's because of the power play time. Paul Maurice's teams, they generally take the most penalties in the NHL. Well, if Detroit's going to be merchants on that and Florida's not going to be able to play on 5-on-5, what's going to happen? So I think Detroit definitely is going to probably play the Panthers pretty well, maybe even escape with a 2-2 or even 3-1 split.
Yeah, and I'm a big fan of Simon Edvinsson. Even though Cam Talbot is on the older side, who knows if Sebastian Costa will be maybe part of the regular squad sometime this season. So he's been playing in Grand Rapids for a while now. So it's maybe a little bit time to give him some NHL experience here with the big boy club. So we'll see if that happens. But thankfully for the Panthers, only one matchup in the beginning of, even in the first half of the season, on October 15th. Happy birthday to me, by the way, on that day. and the next 3 will be March 6th, March 10th, and then March 15th. So 3 matchups in a span of 10 days. So they're going to see a lot of each other, in which the Panthers are hoping to be healthier. So we'll see. Hopefully we will see the Panthers at better health later on in the season. So maybe it'll be that maybe the Panthers won't have Detroit walk all over them in the season series. But we're going to transition over to segment number 2, where we're going to discuss the Buffalo Sabres and the Boston Bruins coming into this season and what they have done and their additions. We're going to discuss that more next year on the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. Today's episode is brought to you by Monarch Money. And most people can't name all their financial accounts or even what they're worth, whether it's 401ks, properties, or investments. And when you don't have the full picture, you can end up leaving money on the table. That's why there's Monarch Money. It's an all-in-one personal finance tool that brings your entire financial life together all in one clean, easy-to-use interface on your laptop or your phone. Monarch is built for people with busy lives. So if you've been putting off organizing your finances, Monarch is for you. Monarch does the heavy lifting for you. You can link all your accounts in minutes, see clear data visuals, smart categorization on your spending, and finally feel in control of your money without ever touching a spreadsheet. Don't let financial opportunities slide through the cracks. Use code LOCKEDONNHL at monarchmoney.com in your browser for half off of your first year. That's 50% off of your first year at monarchmoney.com with code LOCKEDONNHL. Segment number 2 here on this Friday, September 12th edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. Armando Velez here with Nich Fairbanks on another edition of Fairbanks Friday to discuss the Buffalo Sabres and the Boston Bruins on what happened in the season series between the two and where the teams look as far as coming into this season. Which, funny enough, right before recording, the Buffalo Sabres did sign Alexander Georgiev to a 1-year deal for $850K, literally like 30 minutes right before we started recording. So, but I don't expect him to be the main starter, as he was a kind of a disaster in Colorado at the beginning of last year. But so 4 games between the Panthers and the Sabres last season. So the Panthers lost the first one where it was the game after Alexander Barkov had that injury sliding into the boards in Ottawa, and then they go that next game in Buffalo, and then Buffalo got 2 in a 2-minute span. Matthew Tkachuk gets hurt. Cats losing this one. Later on in that one, Panthers took it to them, scoring twice on the power play, winning 5-2. And then the third game, Vitek Vanacek made his Panthers debut, the day after the trade deadline, Panthers were held them to 21 shots, and then living in the offensive zone, winning that one 4-0. And then the fourth game, the strangest one of them all. Only 2 goals were scored by the Buffalo Sabres, both by one by JJ Peterka, the other one by Rasmus Dahlin. And then this was in the middle of Jesse Puljujarvi's hot streak as he scored his 4th goal of the season. And then Panthers were able to win in a shootout, which neither team scored in the shootout until the final round, which was scored by your boy Anton Lundell, Nick. So Panthers win the season series 3-1 in this one. But there's a lot of noise in Buffalo when it comes to what's happened with the team. There was a leak in their arena just a few months ago. I don't know if you saw that, but also there was a big trade for JJ Peterka bringing in Josh Stone and Michael Kesselring, so some depth. But they lose the top end scorer, and it's that continuous reputation of losing superstar players like a Sam Reinhart, Jack Eichel. When is that team going to stop the bleeding for them? They did sign Alex Lyon after he played in Detroit the last few years, but there's also the drama of, do they trade Bowen Byram? Do they extend him? They ended up extending him, but when it comes to his role, he's not on either of the top power play units on either of the two, because Rasmus Dahlin takes one, Owen Power takes the other one. So Bowen Byram is in a strange place where it comes to his roster position. He's a few years from UFA, so although he wasn't traded now, he will be likely in the future. And you're thinking 40 goal scorer in Tage Thompson, likely a Norris candidate on a great team in Rasmus Dahlin. This team shouldn't have an issue putting things together, right? Wrong. That's been an issue for this team. They haven't been able to get it together.
So the Buffalo Sabres, since they gotten rid of Briere, who else was on that team? Drury, like those Buffalo teams, and even Brian Campbell, those teams that you were watching in the 2000s that actually, like, they looked like a great team, and they had Dominik Hasek. Far and away a distant memory.
Mm-hmm.
This Buffalo organization reminds me of the Florida Panthers in the early 2000s into Dale Talon's tenure. Unfortunately, try to sign anybody they can, but they can't keep their own talent. They draft people, but their drafting is not the best. Tage Thompson was a trade, for Ryan O'Reilly. So at least they got something back for that. But you have to wonder how many more years he's going to kind of put up with that type of this kind of output, I'll say. You have 2 top defensemen, Dahlin and the guy that they just drafted, Owen Power. Dahlin obviously is a great defenseman already. Power, I'm really not sold on too much right now, and he's not really, he's not really showing me the caliber that he needs to be. I just don't see any positivity out of Buffalo outside of what the Bills did last Sunday. So, to me, I think there needs to be a change in ownership. I think there needs to be a change in management. And for whatever that's going to bring, I hope it brings something fresh in, something new, and people who want to deal with the problems of today and not have to deal with, the business and how they did business back in the day, because I feel like that's what their owner is doing now.
Yeah. So, yeah. And the Pagulas, they're involved in the whole community. They own both teams. They are now building a new stadium for the football team. So I don't think he's leaving the region anytime soon. And he loves Kevin Adams. He's like attached to him. So he just refuses to let him go. Kind of like how Stephen Ross is with Chris Greer. But hey, this isn't not a football podcast. But but you could have a sense of attachment and just an inability. But it seems like that Kevin Adams is actually on the hot seat, and it's not fair to Lindy Ruff that he's coming into this situation, although he chose to coach them again. But you're gonna have a different GM likely who Lindy Ruff isn't his guy, so that's a little bit of a tough position for him to be in. So the season series coming up for the Panthers and the Sabres, October 18th, a matinee game on a Saturday, which they love scheduling Buffalo and Florida in matinees. They had 2 in 1 year just a few years ago. And then January 12th, uh, uh, at home on February 2nd, and then at home on February 27th. So before the Olympics and after the Olympics. So how fresh will the Panthers be? Will they be motivated on that second February 2nd game? But they struggled out of the first gate in the four nations, and then they were guns blazing after that first game. So they were on fire after that. So you were trying to say something?
I have a theory as to why the matinee games of Buffalo. Alexander Barkov has said that he will not play Buffalo in the evenings because he has reservations at the Buffalo Wild Wings, maybe in Buffalo, or at any of the wing houses in Buffalo that evening, and he cannot afford to play that evening and miss out on the wonderful accoutrement that they do bring there in Buffalo. So that's my theory. And you know what? If you get a chance to ask him that, please, that would be amazing.
That's a good theory, and got to go to the Anchor Bar if you guys are ever in Buffalo, even though that's a tourist trap, just like Pat's and Geno's in Philadelphia. But I'm sure the locals have better ideas than I do, especially. But next one, right before we transition to segment number 3, Boston. The Panthers just not only obliterated them, but these games were absolutely physical, starting with the opening night, banner raising night. AJ Greer got into a fight with Kastelik, Trent Frederick, and Matthew Tkachuk were going at it. The 6-4 score doesn't tell the whole story, as the Panthers were up 6-2 after prior to making it closer. So then the next one on October 14th, Monday matinee, another AJ Greer fight, this time with Pavel Zacha. And it was 2 games, the second game and the third game, where Nate Schmidt and Brad Marchand had coincidental minors, both of them, for roughing calls. So all was forgiven after that trade. So the Panthers once again pressed up on the gas. Sam Reinhart both had a power play goal and a shorthanded goal in that game, and then the Panthers were able to rest up right before the very next day, where the Panthers were the away team in the Blue Jackets home opener, where they honored Johnny Gaudreau. But then that third matchup, 43-18 in shots for the Panthers. Sam Reinhart scores at the buzzer, and then David Pastrnak scores at the buzzer. So I remember discussing at the time, 9 times out of 10, you win that game when you tilt the ice that much for the Panthers. And then the March 11th game, where the Panthers took their foot off the gas. The game was won. It was the first game after the Aaron Ekblad suspension, and then 2 goals in less than 3 minutes. You go from 2 points to none after that. So it was just a lack of focus. But it was an injury-filled year for the Bruins, where they lost Hampus Lindholm, McAvoy with that inflammation during the Four Nations in his shoulder, traded Brandon Carlo away, and David Pastrnak had 50 more points than the next best guy. And this version of the Boston Bruins, their middle six is mostly third line guys, playing some second line roles. So I'm not sure if they have the depth for it, but they still have the foundational pieces of goal scorer, top defenseman, and Jeremy Swayman, which this year, Jeremy Swayman's not going to be going into a contract negotiation that will delay his start to the season.
So I was there opening night last year, and I forget who they had starting. Was it
Korpisalo?
It was Korpisalo. So I think after Korpisalo gave up like 2 or 3, Florida fans started chanting, "We want Swayman."
Yes.
And we got Swayman. So I don't think he scares Panthers at all. I mean, they've been able to beat him and Boston when it matters the most. The Bruins were more concerned last year with settling scores of the previous 2 seasons than playing hockey. Let's be honest. They were trying to instigate, trying to get the guys to fight. But I think coming into this season, I don't really think you're going to see that. I think there's going to be respect, for Brad Marchand, because listen, he didn't ultimately make the decision to be traded. I mean, he went to management and ownership saying, "Hey, listen, I'm here to bridge the gap. I'll take a little bit less money," and they're still saying, "Nope, we're going to trade you." And why are you going to trade them to your newest rival? Don't know what they were thinking there, but I'm glad they did. But I think this year Boston is going to be a feisty team. I think they're going to be better than people think, but I still don't think that they make the playoffs. I did make the prediction last year after opening night that this will be the year that they finally don't make the playoffs, and they're poor drafting, poor free agency finally caught up to them. I still think this is going to, still bite them in the butt, but I still think that they're going to be one of those feisty teams that Florida might have a little bit of trouble with. But, if they want to play hockey and not fight, I think Florida will have definitely the edge in that.
And this will be one of the 2-3 game series, as their only visit to Boston will be on October 21st, which is Brad Marchand's return early on in the season, a nationally televised game, and then February 4th, and then April 2nd for the season series. So I wouldn't be surprised if Montreal is the team that gives the Panthers fits once again. But like you said earlier, Detroit's one that is probably that time that they possibly make the playoffs. But like we mentioned with the schedule, the Panthers will get them on the back end of the season. Will the Panthers be fresh? But there's also that conversation of March. Usually it's late March when the Panthers start struggling.
I wonder why.
Will it come earlier? And maybe that might be that time, and the Detroit Red Wings take advantage. But I wouldn't be surprised. But with all the young kids in Montreal, it wouldn't surprise me the least bit again if they are the ones who ultimately give the Panthers fits. But I don't see it with Boston. I don't see it with Buffalo. But we're going to transition to segment number 3, where we're going to preview the rookie prospect showcase that will be going on in Wesley Chapel, Florida this week. And we also got a very encouraging quote from Jack Devine. We'll discuss that next here on the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. The NFL season is here, and FanDuel is making sure you're ready for a kickoff with a can't-miss offer. Right now, new customers can bet $5, and if your first bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. So I love using FanDuel because you could do some same-game parlays, and you could bet on division chances as well. So whether you believe that Nich Fairbanks' Chicago Bears will have a chance to beat the Detroit Lions in Ben Johnson's return to Detroit, you can do that all on FanDuel. And if you believe that the Miami Dolphins will rebound after an embarrassing performance in Week 1 against the Indianapolis Colts, as they'll be facing their division rival New England Patriots in their home opener, you could also use FanDuel to place your bets there. So are you ready to play? Download the FanDuel app now by visiting FanDuel.com to get started. That's FanDuel.com to place your first $5 bet. Segment 3 here on this Friday, September 12th edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. Thank you once again for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day here on a Fairbanks Friday edition of the show. So, Prospect Showcase will be going on this weekend in Wesley Chapel, Florida. The schedule goes as follows. The Panthers will be facing the Carolina Hurricanes at 2 p.m. on Friday. On September 13th, Saturday, against the Tampa Bay Lightning at 5 p.m. And then Monday, they will be playing the Nashville Predators at 12 p.m. We will be in attendance for the Monday game against the Nashville Predators. I will be there to cover the game. I plan to. But yeah, there are a lot of exciting pieces that are returning, some guys who will be new, and also some draft picks of recently for the Panthers who will be there. So some of the new guys that recently got drafted, even though they won't be playing with the team. So Shamar Moses, who will be playing with the North Bay Battalion in the OHL this year, and Shea Bush, who will be playing with Gavin McKenna at Penn State this year. So, and also Penn State has an outdoor game against Michigan State, one of the other teams that Gavin McKenna was considering this year. So this whole CHL NCAA agreement, Shea Bush is one of those beneficiaries from that new deal. And then some guys who will be playing in Charlotte for the first time, Hunter St. Martin, Grayson Sachin, Kirill Gersichemyuk, who are a goaltender, and also Ludwig Janssen. So I'm really looking for Kirill and also Ludwig Janssen, who is another right-handed defenseman, and also for Gersichemyuk. We also got to start thinking about life after Bobrovsky. Could he be the one for the Panthers as the Panthers are looking for life after that? But also Cooper Black is making a return, big goaltender for the Panthers. Jack Devine's joined Charlotte last season, and also has proven himself throughout his college career, and now needs to prove it at the AHL level. So the Panthers will be carrying 15 forwards, 6 defensemen, 3 goalies, and 14 of them are making their debut in this rookie showcase. So when you look at the lineup and you're thinking about the weekend that's coming for these young guns, for the Panthers. What are you most what's the biggest thing that you're looking for?
So I don't know if it's what I'm looking for, but you kind of just talked about it, how there's 14 new players that are making their debut, right? Um, that just shows me that Florida is not messing around with who they're keeping in the organization and who they want around. So I know Zito doesn't have those picks. We say it all the time. There's a letter in the alphabet that we can't say on the show, but it's blank them picks. So I think what the organization is doing now is really understanding the kind of culture they want to develop, the players that they want in the system, and they're not afraid to let guys go. I mean, look at Gregory Denisenko from a couple of years ago. I mean, he was a top prospect. He was the captain of the Russian, IAHF, or I don't. Yeah, he was the captain of their team. Pardon me. And he didn't really turn out to be, unfortunately, anything. He went to Vegas, maybe played a game or two, and now he's back off to Russia. So I think Florida's getting a better understanding of what they need to keep the pipeline going and bring in players that are actually going to help them rather than holding on to projects that may not, pan out for them. But as far as, what I hope to expect, I want these guys to put their best on. This is the next step for them. College, OHL, CHL, all that stuff that they used to do isn't going to matter. How fast are they going to be able to adapt their game to the NHL? And on top of that, are they going to be able to win board battles? Are they going to be able to play defensively? And thirdly, are they going to be able to play physically? So I think that's going to be probably what's going to tell me if these guys are ready. But at the same time, some of them know that they're not going to make it, and they're just trying to show off their talent. And we'll see how long it takes them to make the show, or at least make it up to Charlotte.
Yeah, and George Richards today also asked Jack Devine about just the freedom of playing, and it's just and knowing that the roster is stacked. That does it maybe have the players be a little bit more loose than they, and Jack Devine actually denied it, but I know if I'm in that position, I know that you're gonna still try your best to try to make the team, but knowing that, hey, this is about trying to get better, and that these are also teaching moments in this. So that's also the big benefit in the tournament like this for the Panthers here. So I'm very excited about that. But we also have a quote from Jack Devine on signing with the Panthers, because there was a little bit of noise at this time last season in 2024 about Jack Devine going back to his senior season. Will he get to college free agency? Because we know that the relationship with Isaac Howard and the Tampa Bay Lightning was not well. He ended up being traded to the Edmonton Oilers. Now he's going to be probably playing this year in their lineup. So we were thinking kind of the same thing. Could this happen? Could this be another Zach Hyman situation for the Panthers? So let's get to that quote from what Jack Devine said earlier today.
Yeah, I think it was always an ongoing process. Even though I decided to go back for my senior year, my intentions were always to come sign here in Florida. I made that clear to the staff. And like I said, I was very happy with the way they treated my decision. They always offered me support and whatever I needed during the year. So I was very happy with the way they treated me, and just talking with my agent, my family. You see the success, you have the winning culture, and being able to learn from some of the best players in the world and a world-class organization. It was kind of just a no-brainer, and something I'm super happy with my decision.
And Nick, the fact that he could be humble enough to know that where he was drafted and the experience that came with being in Denver, and knowing that he's going to still get a good amount of playing time with the Denver Pioneers also speaks volume to know that you have to be a little bit patient with the approach when it comes to this. And yeah, like I've mentioned so many times on the show, I'm not expecting a call up this specific season for Devine. So I think it's a real big opportunity for him, as he wasn't in the lineup in the first part of the Calder Cup final, and then the moment that he was reinserted in, they kind of go on a little bit more of a run there. So that's also it's a very mature response.
It definitely is, and I'm glad you brought up Zach Hyman, because this is how the organization has changed. You're not dealing with a player holding you hostage just to get a roster spot, even though they may not be deserving of it at that time or they haven't really proven anything. Zach went and proved himself, so congratulations to him. You're still 0 for 2 in the Stanley Cup Finals, bro. So I'm
Technically
gonna
0 for 1. Technically, since he didn't play this year. Technically.
I'll give you that one, but in my heart of hearts, I'm going to say 0 for 2. But I think Jack, as you said, understands what he's getting into, and I think him taking an extra year in college, not only to get his education, but also to kind of refine some things in his game, allowed him to then translate it into what he did in Charlotte and how he was able to kind of take that next step. Now, you did mention that you weren't thinking about a call-up this year. The only call-up that possibility I see is if it was on an emergency basis, to be honest with you. And I hope it doesn't come to that. But, man, I am ready to kind of see this guy in a Cats uniform, but maybe I need to pump the brakes on that a little bit and just, let things happen as they will, and he will be hopefully a great Florida Panther in the near future.
Yeah, and you can catch the Charlotte Checkers games on Flow Hockey. That's the place to stream all their games as well if you want to check out the Panthers prospects. So it's going to be another exciting season as they hope to build on their Calder Cup runner-up season. Although Jack Devine isn't necessarily the fastest of skaters, he does have outstanding hands, a great shot, and it's another right-handed shot forward that the Panthers could have in their forward pipeline for them, and maybe one of those cheap talents that the Panthers could definitely take advantage in the future, especially when the cap rises even more come next year. But Nick, I want to thank you so much for joining me on another edition of Fairbanks Friday. Welcome back to the show. Grateful to always have you here. Tell everybody where they can find you online, my friend.
Great to be back. Different settings, but we're going to have the same message. Florida Panthers hockey every single Friday. And Fairbanks Friday will be coming to you every week. You guys can follow me at Prudentious0 and Armando. I'll see you next week.
Absolutely, my friend. See you next week. And if you like what you're hearing, please subscribe to the podcast to be notified every single time the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast jumps into your podcast feed. Don't forget to also subscribe to the other shows on the Locked On NHL network, including Locked On NHL, Locked On Fantasy Hockey, Flip Livingstone and Steel Roden, and Locked On NHL Prospects. Thank you once again for making Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day. So I'm Armando Velez with Nich Fairbanks. And you've been listening to the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. We're your team every day.